Have you ever looked at the sky and wondered what holds it up? What ancient force keeps the heavens from collapsing onto the earth? This is the story of Atlas, the titan who bears that celestial weight, not as a hero or villain, but as something far more enduring. A symbol, a sentence, a myth that still stands at the edge of the world. Long before gods ruled Olympus, the world was raw, unformed, chaotic. From this ancient void came the Titans, children of Gaia and Uranus, earth and sky. Among them stood Atlas, son of Iapetus, brother to Prometheus and Epimetheus. While Prometheus gifted fire to mortals and defied the gods in cunning ways, Atlas was something simpler and more brutal. He was strength incarnate, a living pillar of force. Atlas did not question the old order. He was its enforcer. When the Olympians, led by Zeus, rose to challenge the reign of the Titans, Atlas did not hesitate. He fought not for ambition, nor out of a thirst for power, but for the preservation of what had always been. To him, the rebellion was not a noble struggle, it was betrayal. Thus began the Titanomachy, a war of unimaginable fury. For 10 long years, the heavens echoed with the screams of divine combatants. Mountains were torn from the earth and hurled like pebbles. Oceans boiled as Poseidon unleashed storms against titans who responded with earthquakes and fire. Atlas became the embodiment of resistance, a warrior who met the fury of the Olympians with unbreakable resolve. Zeus hurled lightning. Atlas countered with sheer force. The sky darkened, the earth cracked, and for a time, it seemed as though neither side would triumph. But time favors the young, and the Olympians grew in strength and cunning. One by one, the Titans were overwhelmed. The war ended. Many Titans were imprisoned in Tartarus, the deepest abyss beneath existence, where their cries would never reach the surface. But Zeus had a different punishment for Atlas. Not death, not a prison cell, a sentence worse than either. He led Atlas to the edge of the world, to a place beyond the mortal realm where land met the void. There, Zeus pointed upward to the sky and said, "You shall bear this upon your shoulders for eternity." And so, Atlas received his eternal punishment, not in chains, but in duty, not in darkness, but under the ever-watchful stars. And this is where Atlas's true story begins. At first, he resisted. Even Atlas, the titan of strength, was not meant to carry the entire sky. The stars were not merely distant lights. They were burning gods in themselves, celestial fires locked in unending orbits. The sky was a dome of pressure, of memories, of shifting constellations that bore witness to all things. And now, they bore down on Atlas. His knees buckled, his spine screamed, but he did not fall. He planted his feet into the bones of the earth and endured. In the beginning, the pain was constant, a roaring fire across his shoulders. The heavens were heavy with forgotten storms and starlight. Every passing comet was a lance through his mind. But as the centuries rolled on, the agony dulled, not because the weight lightened, but because Atlas accepted it. He became one with the burden, no longer a being resisting his fate, but the very definition of endurance. The ground beneath him became his companion. The stars, though cruel, became familiar. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He did not speak. He simply held. The gods came now and then. Hermes once visited, curious and mocking. Athena came only once, her eyes full of something like pity. Even Zeus himself returned, not to check on the prisoner, but to marvel at the sentence he had crafted. They all left. Atlas remained. He watched civilizations rise. He witnessed the building of Babel, the shaping of the pyramids, the rise of Athens. But he was not part of their world. He was the unseen scaffolding, the myth behind the myths. Sailors whispered about the edge of the world where the sky touches the sea. They did not know that a Titan held aloft. Myths became muddled. Some said Atlas held the earth. Others claimed he was a mountain turned to stone. Statues were carved in his image, bearing spheres that were meant to be globes, but none truly understood the curse. He did not lift the world. He lifted the sky. And though the heavens changed, Atlas did not. He stood. He endured. He was the constant in a universe of chaos. What happens to a mind that holds eternity on its back? Atlas did not just carry the sky. He carried the passage of time. Millennia passed like shadows, and with them came memories, both beautiful and cruel. Each memory, a burden heavier than the last. Atlas remembered the first time he held his newborn daughter, Mara, her eyes full of wonder, not yet knowing the fate that awaited their kind. He remembered the laughter of his siblings around a fire, when the cosmos was young and titans danced beneath twin moons. He remembered the betrayal too, the look on Prometheus's face when he chose humanity over his blood. And worst of all, he remembered the war. Each memory carved itself deeper into the muscles of his back, into the marrow of his bones. There were nights when the stars whispered names long forgotten. The constellations themselves mocked him, reshaping into faces of the past, faces of those he'd loved and those he'd failed. Atlas began to question if this was truly punishment or transformation. Was he being crushed by history or becoming its guardian? There was no answer. One day, a mortal approached him, a figure cloaked in starlight and shadow. It was Heracles, demigod son of Zeus, tasked with retrieving the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides. The garden, guarded by Atlas's own daughters, lay beyond mortal reach. Heracles asked for help, offering to bear the sky, if only for a moment. For the first time in eons, Atlas felt relief. He passed the heavens into the demigod's hands and stretched for the first time in memory. The stars recoiled. The earth trembled. Freedom was intoxicating. But Atlas was not a fool. He knew the gods. He knew this moment was borrowed. And when Heracles tricked him into taking the sky once more, Atlas did not rage. He did not weep. He simply returned to his stance, his penance, his burden. Because by now, the sky was part of him. To shed it completely would be to lose himself. Atlas was no longer a titan. He was the horizon. As the centuries turned, the myths of gods and monsters slowly gave way to the myths of men. But Atlas remained, still, silent, unseen. Until one day, something unexpected stirred the endless cycle, belief. A group of wandering mystics came to the edge of the world, seekers of truth who had pierced the veil of myth. They did not come with weapons or prayers. They came with stories of Atlas passed down by sailors, scholars, and stargazers. They stood before him and spoke his name, not as a curse, but as a reverence. And for the first time, Atlas listened. They did not offer release. They offered recognition. One by one, they sat at his feet and recited the history of humanity as they knew it. Wars and peace, betrayal and love, wisdom and folly. In their voices, Atlas heard echoes of his own past, the lives he had once touched and the legacy that bore his invisible hand. The mystics asked nothing in return. They left behind no temples, only their stories carved in stone. And so, a strange shift occurred. The weight of the sky was no lighter, but the weight of solitude began to lift. In those few shared moments of reverence, Atlas no longer bore his punishment alone. He had witnesses. Atlas had long believed he was beyond dreams. For eons, his mind had been a still lake, reflective but undisturbed. But one night, Beneath a blood-red moon that glowed like a wound in the heavens, something ancient and buried stirred within him. A vision took shape, a dream so vivid it shattered the cold silence of his eternal prison. In this dream, Atlas walked freely beneath the open sky, unburdened and whole. The stars above him pulsed with life, no longer weights of judgment, but celestial companions. He wandered across lands that knew his name not as legend, but as memory. The oceans whispered thanks, the forests bowed in silent reverence. The mountains stood not to challenge him, but to echo his strength. In this imagined world, his steps did not shake the earth, they nurtured it. He saw his daughters again. Mara, radiant and wise, stood among mortals, guiding them through the constellations. Her voice, once a ghost in the wind, rang clearly now, teaching forgotten truths. The other Hesperides danced among golden orchards, untouched by decay. And there was hope, not for freedom, but for meaning. Atlas reached out his massive hand to grasp this beautiful illusion. But as his fingers closed, the vision fractured like ice, and the sky's weight slammed back into his shoulders with cruel certainty. Yet the dream had left something behind, a fracture in the stone, a question in the silence. Could the burden be more than a curse? Could it be a calling? Could he, in his suffering, be a guardian of balance? A titan who held the world together not as punishment, but as purpose? There will be no final battle for Atlas. No climactic moment where chains are shattered and skies fall in fire. No triumph, no applause. That is not the story written for him. His tale is not one of grand resolutions, but of endless resolve, of standing still when all else moves, of bearing the unbearable not because he is forced to, but because the world needs someone who can. He is not a martyr, nor a hero. He is a constant, a presence beyond time. While gods fall, rise, and fade in his stories, Atlas remains. While empires crumble into dust and names are lost in sand, Atlas endures. Each day, the sky above tests him anew. Storms rage across its endless expanse. Celestial bodies pass overhead with ancient weight, and yet his stance never shifts. What do we make of a being who never asked for thanks? Who suffers not for salvation, but for continuity? Perhaps this is the most divine act of all, selfless endurance. Look to the horizon, see where the sky kisses the earth, and know that somewhere in the quiet between stars, a titan still holds firm. Not for glory, not for redemption, but because he must. And in that enduring silence, Atlas teaches us the final, hardest truth. Some burdens must be carried, not to be celebrated, but to preserve what must never fall. That is the legacy of Atlas.